Hello and welcome to BookBeat, the place for all things literary. My name is Sue Ellen Zagrabelny and I'm your host. Today we are at the Hennepin County Library, Maple Grove, and exploring the children's area. Our guest today is Nina Shimon. She is the Youth Services Librarian. And Nina, you're going to tell us a little bit about the children's area. What can you tell me?
Well, the children's area is a great place for families to get together to share books with each other, but also play and explore new ideas and be creative with each other as well.
Okay, now looking around, the lower shelves are for the easy readers. And what can you tell us about these books?
Yeah, these books that are in our very colorful bins are meant primarily for our youngest readers, and they are at this height with covers facing out, so they are accessible to our young readers. Kids gravitate towards colorful covers, and so oftentimes they'll go through and just pick one that appeals to them. Also, they're shelved this way because they're easier to find. If we shelve spine out, these are really skinny books, and so it can be hard to tilt your head sideways to go through all of the titles.
Okay.
And they're at low levels so that kids can reach them. If we put them high up on the shelves, it can be hard for the young ones to access them.
Okay. How has the children's area in libraries changed over the years? What can you tell us about that?
Well, they're certainly more vibrant now than I think they used to be. In Hennepin County Libraries, we've really incorporated the idea of play and how that impacts children's readiness for school and how they learn. Children learn so much through play. They learn how to get along with one another. They are exploring how the world works. So for instance, right now we have a bakery set up in one of our stations, and so they are figuring out, okay, how do I make cookies? How do I set up a store to sell them? What are those interactions like when I am, baking a bagel for my caregiver here?
Oh, how fun. That sounds fascinating. We mentioned the children's, the easy readers, the easy nonfiction area. What about the rest of the children's area? How is it organized?
Well, typically we have our books for our older kids up on the higher shelves, so they can reach them a little bit better. The fiction stories, so the stories that are made up, like our Harry Potters, our Captain Underpants, those are typically arranged by the author's last name. When you get into nonfiction, so the books with facts in them, the true stories, those are cataloged by our Library of Congress classification, which means that we put them by subject. And now they do get special classification codes for that, which can be a little confusing, but that's what the library staff is here to help with. And we do try to give sign markers to help guide families as well.
You were talking about how the libraries have changed over the years, how they've gotten more vibrant. I'm hearing a lot of sound in the children's area. What can you tell me about that?
Well, with kids comes sound. That is how they are learning, and they operate on a different volume than sometimes adults do. And we expect that within a reasonable level. We want kids to be welcome here and to be learning. And we recognize that people are learning in different ways, and so for the older kids or adults who might need a quiet space, we do have study rooms and some quieter areas for them as well. But we really do encourage families to come in with their young kids and play.
Fabulous. That is fabulous. What challenges have arisen as the children's area has changed?
Well, even as we expect the noise, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging, but we do know there are certain special times that are noisier, like after story times. And we've tried to accommodate that by opening up our big meeting room so the kids can really run around and play on some large muscle toys and, really exploit different cushions. We have a playhouse that they can use, and that kind of helps contain sound when we have big groups of kids. But we do notice that, oftentimes the really young kids do have to go home for lunch and nap, and so sometimes our later hours are a little bit quieter, and we can kind of promote those for, grown-ups who might need to come in for more serious work.
That's true. Sometimes I've had to come in and do some concentrating, and I guess I have come in the afternoon because I haven't noticed a lot of children, but it's wonderful to see how they use the space and how the parents are here using the space with them. That leads me to, how does families' use of the library change as their kids grow? What can you tell me about that?
Well, at least within the Maple Grove community, we have a lot of young kids who come in and use our play area to explore and try out different things that way. Then Maple Grove, as kids get older and into school, they might be busier with some extracurriculars. And so oftentimes we'll see those families coming in to just find books that, they're either reading for fun or they're doing a school assignment. And then as they move into the teen years, they'll come in with their study group or groups of friends to either hang out or, prepare for their exams.
That's really great that there's that kind of accommodation for various age students. What are some of the things that adults can know about how they can engage their kids in the library and with reading?
Well, oftentimes it's just taking cues from the kid that you're with. If they are wanting to play, ask them questions about what they're playing with. So if they are cooking in the kitchen, ask them what they're making. Ooh, can I try some? Would you like to add this ingredient? If they're reading, just go along with the book that they pick. It may not be to your taste, but there is something in there that really sparked their interest, and that's what we're after. We want to promote the joy of reading, and so sometimes that is reading the same book 25 times in a row.
That can be very true. Welcome back to Book Beat. I'm with Nina Shimon, Youth Services Librarian at Hennepin County Library, Maple Grove. And Nina's got some books to show us from the collection. And would you tell us about the first one?
Certainly. Now, the first one you may recognize. It came out in 1967, and it is called Brown Bear, What Do You See? By Bill Martin Jr., illustrated by the famous Eric Carle. And the reason I chose this, even though it might be known to many people, is the importance it is in children's mastery of reading. This is something that I noticed at my own house with my toddler and my infant, is that this is a great book for building confidence with young readers. There's not really a storyline. It goes, Brown Bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. And, red bird, what do you see? I see, this next animal looking at me. And the reason this is so great in building confidence with young kids is that they can figure out this pattern really quickly, and they memorize these animals so fast that my 3-year-old, reads this book to her younger sister, and that creates such a feeling of pride, and that is such an important thing in building young readers, is feeling that they can do it.
Oh, that's perfect. And do any of these books come in other languages?
Yes, right now with me I have Vietnamese that we have in our collection, as well as a Chinese board book. It also comes as an easy reader, so with this one it really is, it's a great thing about easy readers is that they are kind of the shape of chapter books that they will be reading as they get older. So they feel more independent even with the size and shape of this book. But what I really appreciate about this format is that as you are going through this with your young reader, is that there are prompts of things you can ask about the book, like what is this word? What animal is this? What can you tell me about this animal? So it asks, where do these animals live? How do they move? And one thing that I've discovered is, I'm talking about how, toddlers and older kids respond to this book. If you're reading with a younger one, these are great because they are still very much learning the basics of what things are and what pictures mean. So when you're talking about green frog, what do you see? You're pointing out that this animal is green. You're pointing out that this whole picture is a frog, not just, their feet or their eyes. Babies are learning that this whole thing is the frog. And so doing this on repetition is a great way for them to learn as well.
Okay, now, so these are available to check out for the younger readers.
Yes.
Okay, and you had a second book, I believe, called Island Born.
Yes.
What about this book?
This book, Island Born by Juno Diaz, does have more of a story. It is about a young girl named Lola who goes to a school where everyone is from somewhere else. It starts off that Lola's school is a school of faraway places. And in this story, her teacher gives the class an assignment of drawing a picture of where they are from originally. Now, most of the students get really excited about this assignment. They are picturing pyramids and canals. One kid talks about a mongoose. For Lola, it's a little more difficult. She moved here when she was a baby, and so she doesn't have any pictures herself of where she is from. But she gets an idea. She will ask everyone in her neighborhood to tell her about the island, which is where she is from. And through that, she gets this very colorful and creative picture of the island with bats as big as blankets. And in this story, the bats are drawn with, blanket wings, mangoes as big as your head, and, just really colorful people. Now, on the flip side, she begins to hear the story of, this battle on the island with this great monster, and there you get a glimpse of why so many people move from the island, to the United States. And so this is just a terrific story that's, filled with color and beauty, but it starts to touch on the ideas of immigration, of belonging, and being able to talk about who you are and where you're from.
It's really important that kids get a picture and get a feeling of place, of where they're from. So this is a great book to bring that forward for children. Mm-hmm. There's a book called Hidden Figures that you're showing us. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so many readers might be familiar with this title, but maybe not this format. Hidden Figures originally came out as a nonfiction book geared more towards adults in 2016. It's written by Margot Lee Shetterly and was made into a movie starring Octavia Spencer. And it's about 4 women who worked at Langley Laboratory kind of during World War II and the space race era. But the reason that I pulled this book out is because it is a story that can be used with the whole family.
You were mentioning these women that worked for Langley and during World War II and the space race. Could you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so the ones featured in this story are Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden. And so during World War II. Now, they each joined Langley at a different time. So they were all mathematicians who worked at Langley Laboratory. During World War II, they would do math that helped make airplanes safer and fly faster. During the 1950s, when they brought in machine computers, they would help program those machines. And then during the space race, they would help, calculate necessary trajectories that would be used in space shuttles, that would carry the likes of John Glenn and Neil Armstrong. Now, I grew up learning about the astronauts, but oftentimes we didn't learn about the people behind, the moon landing. And those stories are important because as we celebrate, these great victories, for the United States, these women faced real racial and gender discrimination in the workplace as, we're coming to these great accomplishments. So it's important that we know those stories too.
Mm-hmm. And you have some different versions besides the children's book. What else do you have?
So, as I mentioned, it did originally come out as an adult nonfiction book, which is a bit chunkier than our picture book, but it also is available as more of a middle grade nonfiction book. So, if you have a family with a variety of ages of readers, everybody can kind of read at the level that they're comfortable at, and you can have, a family book club. And so, older readers can kind of throw in tidbits that they might be getting in these thicker ones to help, booster the experience that your younger readers will be getting through the picture book.
So it can really foster some family discussions.
Certainly, and there's a lot in here. Kids are often really interested in space and rockets, so you can talk about that. You can talk about history and social movements. I mentioned the gender and race discrimination. That can be a discussion on mathematics and education. How were girls treated, and specifically African American girls treated in the field of mathematics as they went to school and went into their professional fields? So there's a lot of discussion even in a thin book like this.
That's really good for parents to know, and good for kids to know that they can take part in these discussions too.
And kids don't often get asked about these big things, and as adults start the conversation, it's okay for them to not have all the answers either. You can just ask your child, well, this seems kind of strange. What do you think about that? And kids don't often have that opportunity to talk about big picture ideas. And so this is a great book to kind of get that rolling and let them really think about those things.
Thinking, that's key, that we encourage our children to think, not just spit out facts. Nina, how do parents and other adults approach reading aloud to children? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I would say first thing, don't worry. It's not a big performance. Typically, your kid just wants to spend time with you and enjoy the story. So take your time. Usually slow down is a big one. You don't have to race through it. In fact, as I was talking about with Brown Bear, what do you see? Take a moment to stop and look at what Eric Carle did with the illustrations. Why did he paint the way he did? Why is it arranged, on the page like that? Oftentimes kids will have different ideas than what we do regarding that. So yeah, just take your time and enjoy the time with your young one.
Nina Shimmons, thank you for joining us at BookBeat, and thank you for sharing the library with us.
Well, thank you for visiting. It was great to have you here.
We're at the Hennepin County Library, Maple Grove, and we're going to be talking about graphic novels. And our guest is Stacy Heron Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you
And
very
you have
much.
some books to share for us.
Yep, I'm very excited to talk about graphic novels. We've got both children's, teen, and adult graphics in our library, but I'm talking today about children's graphics because it's such a fast-growing field in book publishing that kids just love the graphics. They can't get enough of them, and I want to talk a little bit about why that is. I think with graphic novels, they're very fast action. The plots are very exciting, and it draws kids in, it draws teens in, and adults, but especially kids, the plot that they have. The other thing is our society is such a visual society, it makes sense that graphics with their illustrations are very popular. Kids relate to them, they relate to the stories, and they just love them.
That's great. Why don't you show us a couple of them?
Okay. The titles that I've picked out, one thing about graphic novels is it covers all genres. What makes it a graphic novel is that it's set in a cartoon type of style, in a sequence. But all of these graphic novels can be any genre, whether it's a romance, a mystery, nonfiction even. In fact, one of the most exciting titles is this nonfiction one, and all of these.
What is it called?
This is called the Geronimo Stilton, and there's a series that these characters are in, but in the graphic novels, they are actually nonfiction because even though the story is fiction, inside on literally every page is a nugget of history that makes it a nonfiction type of book. Very exciting. As I mentioned before, what attracts kids to these types of books is that the action is you have in every little page here exciting characters.
Excellent.
The other thing that why I selected these books as well is because the plot, usually the kids really gravitate towards animals. And for instance, this book, the character is, as you can see from the drawings, a rabbit, but the plot is very human. Same thing with all of these books like Dog Man and Crafty Cat. This is called El Defo, and it's a very popular book. It's an award-winning book, and what it involves is the characters it's a graphic with illustrations of animals, but it's the human plot of a little rabbit having an illness that caused her to be deaf, and what happens to her in the story is how she relates to her friends, how they relate to her, in how she lives in a hearing world when she can't hear. And so a lot of these books that appeals to kids are stories where the characters feel different themselves, but how in the end their friends come to understand them, and they then can relate to whatever their issues are.
Can you tell us about Crafty Cat? We've
Yep.
talked about El Defo that was
Crafty-
about a rabbit. What about the cat?
Similar type of theme in terms of the action is just it makes you want to turn the pages very quickly. It draws kids into the book, the plot does. And it is, again, about a girl, but in this case, she likes cats and she dresses up as one. And she has her various misadventures, but in the end, everything turns out well. Same thing kind of in El Defo. And the same thing in a lot of these graphic books that appeals to kids and to the caregivers that might be reading these to the kids.
Excellent, excellent. What about Dogman? Is that similar?
This Dog Man is another type of graphic book that again uses an animal character but with human characteristics. What's interesting about this book is that this is the #1 children's graphic book right now. Again, I mentioned earlier that graphic novels are just blowing away the competition for books. It's like 25% of the book sales in America are devoted to graphics. And this is the #1 graphic book right now for 2018. And it's a fabulous book. Graphic books are usually funny. This is funny. All of these titles, I think most of them are funny, and that That makes kids engage, and it motivates them to want to read more when you have fun reading. And these are fun books.
Excellent. It's so nice to have you join us, Stacy Heron.
Thank you.
And good luck with
Yep.
all the graphics that you're coming up with. Hello, I'm Sue Ellen Zagrabelny from BookBeat, and we're at the Hennepin County Library, and we are speaking with PJ Miracle. And PJ, welcome. PJ, you have a couple books to talk about today, and they are for teens. What can you tell us about them, please?
Yeah, the two books that I'm talking about today are The Hate You Give and On the Come Up by Angie Thomas.
The Hate You Give, tell us about that first.
So this is Angie Thomas's first novel. It's about Star Carter. She's a teen, and she witnesses the murder of her best friend by a police officer. And it's kind of following her story through dealing with the grief and just processing the aftermath of, seeing such a terrible event.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a really intense book, but kids like it? Teens like it?
It's really popular. They just made a movie about it that's also getting really good reviews, just like the book did. And just, like I said, it's she lives in a poor black part of town, goes to school in a wealthier white part of town, and it kind of follows her as she navigates like these two different worlds that she lives in.
Okay.
And how she, employs code switching in dealing with certain social situations in each of these two different realities that she lives in.
Code switching, tell me about that.
So code switching is just kind of altering the way that you're speaking and acting, depending on, the social situation that you're in, just to
fit in better,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. What about the second book?
So On the Come Up was her second book, and it takes place in the same neighborhood that The Hate You Give takes place in. It follows Bree Jackson. She's a young girl who's really interested in hip hop. And I was reading about what Angie Thomas was saying about these two characters, and she wanted to have them both in the same neighborhood, but have totally different characters to show that, not all, young black girls are stereotyped a lot, to show that they're not the same people. Mm-hmm. The themes in On the Come Up are a little bit different. It kind of deals with abandonment and poverty issues. Bree's dad is dead, and her mom is a recovering drug addict. And so she's sort of issues like, losing jobs, then having to, deal with, do you pay your bills for the gas, or do you pay for your phone so that you can continue to try and get jobs? But Bree uses hip hop in a way that she's super smart. Like the way that she thinks is a major issue in this. Somebody will say something, and then it will kind of go into her inner monologue and kind of rapping and rhyming, just like inspiration. It's really cool.
Oh, how fun!
And another thing that I saw with this, like Spotify, for example, has an official playlist for this book.
Oh, wow.
Because there's not a movie made out of this one, but like I said, Spotify has an official playlist with a bunch of hip hop on it, which is pretty cool.
Wow. Well, PJ, thank you so much for sharing these books with us. And come to the library and check them out. I'm Sue Ellen Zagrabelny, host of BookBeat, and we're at the Maple Grove Library, the Hennepin County Maple Grove Library. And I have Lori Stieg, associate librarian, with books for middle grades. What do you have to share with us today?
Mason, in the story told by Mason Buttle, is about a kid who has learning disabilities. He also sweats quite a bit. He has a hard time making friends. So the one friend that he did have passed away. He fell out of an apple tree, and he wound up passing away. He does get another new friend, and they wind up finding a root cellar that they make as their secret hideaway.
Don't tell too much about it.
Okay. Because he has problems with reading and writing, he gets on this machine at school called the Dragon, and appropriate because I'm sitting underneath one, that he sits and talks to, and it transcribes everything that he says into the Dragon, and then if anything he wants printed out, then he can have it printed out.
Wow. So that sounds like a very interesting book for someone who doesn't feel like they fit in.
Correct. He also gets really bullied. He's got a couple neighbors that really bully him a lot too.
So it covers the whole subject of bullying.
Yes.
Okay. So why is that popular to mid grade?
I think it's popular just because it's basically got all the genres that you can. I mean, you've got the bullying, you've got friendship, you've got he's still, severely dyslexic. I mean, it's got everything.
Well, good. That sounds like a good recommendation for a middle grade student that would like to read something challenging.
Yes.
It sounds like it.
Yes.
Sounds like it's very challenging.
Yes.
Lori, you have another piece of media. It doesn't appear to be a printed book. What do you have?
This is Skullduggery Pleasant. It's an audiobook for kids.
Okay, we can just set it down here. Go ahead.
It's actually an audiobook that helps kids listen, and it also helps kids with their reading. When I was growing up, I had comprehensive problems, and so for me, listening to a book I find is actually a lot easier than if I sat down and read it, because I understand it better having somebody else read it to me. And I think with kids listening to audiobooks, that's what they would get. It improves your decoding skills, which is the same thing as phonics.
Okay.
And it also, helps you with your comprehensive skills on top of that.
Well, that's fascinating. Where in the library do they find these books?
They're actually on the back side of the graphic novels. The kids' graphic novels is so if you go down this aisle right here, they're on the back side of the graphic novels.
Okay, so there are lots of choices for middle grade students.
Yes.
And other than printed books, they can listen to audiobooks. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add that you'd like to tell us about these middle grade students?
You've got, besides these books, Harry Potter is also
Still.
another one that the kids, that's popular with the middle grade kids. You have Dork Diaries, you have the tales of the not so popular kids that are, popular with the kids. Yes, I mean, they've got a wide range of books that they can read.
Well, that's fabulous. Thank you for being a part of that, to bring reading to these middle grade students. Thank you, Lori Stieg, for joining us today. Thank you for joining us at Book Beat today, touring the Hennepin County Library children's area. We got to see young children's books, middle grades, graphic novels, teens, and young adults. We hope you enjoyed this show, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, so, it's like most of the library, we do have books for teens over here, both fiction and nonfiction, but we also have a lot of spaces for teens to study, to hang out, to be on the computer. We know that at this age, teens often know what they want to do in the library. They just need a space to do it.